I never thought a dog could change my life the way Daisy did. I wasn't in a good place when I first met her. I'd just gone through a tough breakup, and the loneliness felt unbearable. My sister, noticing my struggle, decided I needed a dog. She called one day, telling me she'd adopted a dog for me. I wasn't sure about it at first, but when I met Daisy, it was like meeting an old friend. She was a small, mixed breed dog with big brown eyes that seemed to understand my pain. At first, it was just about companionship, taking her on walks, feeding her, and occasionally playing with her. But Daisy quickly became more than just a pet. She was my confidant, my quiet support. Whenever I was feeling low, she would sit by me, placing her head on my lap, her eyes full of empathy. It felt like she was there to remind me I wasn't alone. One evening, after months of feeling like I was getting my life back on track, Daisy and I went for our usual walk. It was a calm evening, with the sun starting to set behind the trees in our neighborhood. But that evening, something was different. Daisy, usually so carefree, suddenly stopped in her tracks. She was tense, her ears perked, eyes darting around. I couldn't see what she was reacting to, but I could feel her unease. She wasn't just being cautious, she was alert, like something was wrong. Before I could react, Daisy began pulling me toward the end of the block. I had no idea why she was in such a hurry, but I followed her instinctively. As we reached the corner, I heard it. Screams. A woman's scream, desperate and filled with terror. It sent a chill down my spine. Without hesitating, Daisy sprinted forward, and I followed, my heart racing. We turned the corner just in time to see a man dragging a woman into an alley. I froze, but Daisy didn't. She lunged forward, barking fiercely, biting the man's leg. He stumbled back as though shocked by the sudden attack. Daisy, without hesitation, distracted him long enough for the woman to break free and run. The man tried to retaliate, but I was already calling 911. Daisy stood by my side, panting, her tail wagging slightly as if to say, "We did it." In that moment, I realized something. Daisy wasn't just my pet. She was my protector, my hero, and I owed her everything. The police arrived within minutes. Daisy, still on alert, stood by my side as they questioned us. The woman who had been attacked was safe, and the man was taken into custody. I remember the look on her face as she thanked me, but it wasn't me she was thanking. It was Daisy. She kept saying, "Your dog saved me. She saved my life." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and awe. After everything calmed down, I walked Daisy home. We didn't speak much, there was no need. The bond between us was deeper than words. But as we walked, I realized something. Daisy hadn't just protected a stranger. She had protected me too. When we got back to the house, I sat on the couch, Daisy curling up beside me. I kept replaying what had happened in my mind, trying to process it all. Daisy had acted without hesitation. She had trusted her instincts, and because of that, a woman's life was saved that night. And I had been there too. Because of Daisy, I had been there. That night, I didn't sleep much. My mind kept racing, but every time I looked down at Daisy, I felt a sense of peace. She was my hero, and I knew from that moment on I would never take her presence in my life for granted again. She was more than just a dog, she was my guardian angel. The weeks that followed were a blur of gratitude and reflection. Daisy became somewhat of a local hero. People I didn't even know would stop me on the street asking if I was the guy with the dog who had saved the woman. They'd smile at Daisy and give her treats, and she'd happily accept as if she knew exactly how much she meant to them. But to me, she was just my Daisy, my best friend. Despite the attention, Daisy remained the same. She was always by my side, a quiet, steady presence in my life. The bond between us deepened even more after that night. I started to realize that the connection we shared wasn't just about companionship. It was something deeper, something unspoken. Daisy had saved a life that night, but she had also saved me in ways I couldn't even explain. I wasn't the same person I was before. One day, about a month later, I decided to take Daisy on a longer walk than usual. We went to a park a few miles from our home, a place we hadn't visited in a while. It was a beautiful, sunny afternoon, and I thought it would be nice to get out of the neighborhood for a while. Daisy was thrilled as we walked, sniffing the grass and wagging her tail. We came across a small pond where people were fishing, and I stopped to watch, thinking how peaceful everything seemed. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a man stumble near the water's edge. He was holding his chest, his face contorted in pain. Without thinking, I rushed over to him, Daisy following close behind. The man collapsed on the ground, and that's when I realized what was happening. He was having a heart attack. I immediately called 911, but in that moment, I felt helpless. I wasn't trained for this. I didn't know what to do. But Daisy was already on it. She darted over to the man's side, sitting close to him and gently nudging his hand with her nose. It was almost like she was comforting him, telling him to hold on. She stayed right there, next to him, her presence calm and steady. By the time the paramedics arrived, Daisy hadn't left the man's side. They told me she had helped keep him conscious just by being there, by offering him something to hold on to in his time of fear. They said her calmness might have saved him. Daisy, once again, had proven her worth. As the man was taken to the hospital, I couldn't help but stare at Daisy in awe. I couldn't believe it. She wasn't just a companion or a protector. She was something else entirely. I knew in that moment that she was more than a pet. She was my lifeline. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about what Daisy had done. She had stayed by the man's side during a heart attack, offering comfort when I could do nothing. I had always known she was special, but this was beyond anything I had expected. It felt like every time I doubted her, she proved me wrong in the most incredible ways. A few weeks after the incident in the park, I got a call from the hospital. It was the man Daisy had helped, and he wanted to thank me personally. We arranged to meet at a cafe, and I couldn't help but feel nervous. When I saw him, he was smiling, looking healthier than I'd expected. His name was Tom, and he told me that Daisy's presence had kept him grounded during those terrifying moments. She just kept looking at me, Tom said, his eyes welling up with emotion. I was in so much pain, but when she nudged my hand, it felt like everything was going to be okay. She made me feel like I wasn't alone. Hearing him say that made my chest tighten. I didn't know how to respond. Daisy hadn't just saved Tom's life. She had given him hope in a moment when all seemed lost. Tom reached into his pocket and pulled out a small framed photo of Daisy that he had printed. I wanted to give this to you, he said, handing it to me, because she's my hero, too. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. In that moment, I realized that Daisy's actions had created a ripple effect in the world. She hadn't just saved people in the physical sense. She had reminded us all that there was still goodness, still hope, even in the darkest times. When I returned home later that day, Daisy was waiting for me at the door, as always. I hugged her tightly, whispering into her fur, "You're my hero, Daisy. I don't know what I would do without you." And as I held her, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the dog who had transformed my life, one life-saving moment at a time. Life with Daisy continued to amaze me. She was my constant, my protector, and now I realized she was becoming a symbol of hope for everyone around her. People in our neighborhood would greet her with a smile, knowing the story of how she had saved lives. But to me, she was still the same quiet companion, always there when I needed her most. One evening, a few months after Tom's heart attack, something unexpected happened. I was walking Daisy through the park, our usual routine, when we came across a young couple sitting on a bench looking upset. The man looked like he was consoling the woman, but there was a heaviness in the air. As we passed them, Daisy stopped and walked over to the bench. She sat down next to the woman, resting her head gently on her knee. The woman looked down at Daisy, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Is she okay?" she asked softly, almost as if Daisy could sense her pain. I nodded. "She's more than okay. She's been through a lot. She's a healer in her own way." The woman smiled faintly and began to pet Daisy. "My husband and I are going through a rough patch," she admitted. "We just lost our baby, and I feel like nothing will ever be okay again." My heart broke hearing her words, but Daisy simply sat there, her presence calm and steady. Without saying a word, she seemed to offer comfort, reminding this woman that, while life can be heartbreaking, there is always a moment of peace waiting in the chaos. The couple stayed with us for a while, talking and slowly opening up. Daisy never left their side, and by the time we left, I could see the difference in the woman's face. Less sadness, more strength. That day, I understood something important. Daisy wasn't just saving lives, she was healing hearts. A few weeks later, I got a call from the local animal shelter. They had heard about Daisy's heroics and asked if I would be willing to bring her in for a special event they were organizing, a community awareness campaign for service animals and therapy dogs. They wanted her to be the star of the event. At first, I hesitated. Daisy wasn't the type to enjoy being in the spotlight, and I wasn't sure how she'd handle the attention. But when I asked her, she wagged her tail almost as if she understood. The day of the event, I was nervous, but Daisy was calm as always. When we arrived, the shelter was filled with families, other dogs, and people who were eager to meet Daisy. She walked around, tail wagging, occasionally sitting for some gentle petting, but when the crowd saw her, they were amazed. She had become a symbol of hope to so many, and seeing her in person only seemed to make her story more real. As we were leaving the event, a little girl approached us, holding a stuffed dog in her arms. She looked up at me with wide eyes. "Is that Daisy?" she asked, her voice full of awe. I nodded, and Daisy, who had been contently sitting by my side, got up and walked over to the girl. Without hesitation, she gently licked the girl's hand, and the child's face lit up. "She saved someone's life, right?" the girl asked, still in awe. I smiled and nodded again. "Yes, she did. More than once." The girl looked at Daisy with a newfound admiration. "She's my hero." And in that moment, I realized that Daisy had become more than just a dog to me. She had become a symbol of love, strength, and resilience. She was teaching others that no matter what life throws at you, there's always hope. A few months later, Daisy's story reached even further. I received a message one morning from a man named David who had been following her story. He said that he had recently lost his dog, and Daisy's bravery had inspired him to adopt again. He had visited a shelter and found a dog in need of a home, just like Daisy had once been. He wanted to thank me and Daisy for reminding him that the world still had good in it. David invited us to visit his home to meet the new dog, a young Labrador named Max. I agreed, and a few days later, we went to meet him. Max was full of energy, bouncing around excitedly, and when he saw Daisy, his tail started wagging uncontrollably. It was like he recognized something in her, something that made him trust her right away. Daisy, calm as ever, greeted him gently, and they became fast friends. David and I talked for hours about the difference dogs can make in people's lives. I realized that Daisy had done so much more than I could have ever imagined. She had touched the lives of so many people, helping save lives, heal hearts, and even inspire new adoptions. It was like she was on a mission, and I had just been lucky enough to walk alongside her. I couldn't help but smile as I watched Daisy and Max play in the yard. She had always been there for me, but now I saw her giving that same love and comfort to others. Daisy wasn't just my hero. She was a hero to everyone who needed her. As time passed, Daisy and I continued our quiet life together, but something had shifted. I felt like I was no longer just going through the motions of living. I was truly present, living with purpose because of her. She had a way of making everything feel like it mattered, from our early morning walks to our evening naps on the couch. It was as if every moment with her was a gift. One day, I received a letter in the mail. It was from the woman Daisy had helped on that terrifying night, the one who had been attacked. I hadn't heard from her since that night, but as I opened the envelope, I saw a small, handwritten note inside. "Dear my name, I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted to take a moment to thank you, not just for that night, but for the incredible gift your dog, Daisy, gave me. She was my savior, my protector, and I can never thank her enough. Since then, I've made a huge change in my life, taking steps to finally leave an abusive relationship that I'd been stuck in for years. Daisy gave me the strength to walk away. She showed me that I deserved better. I am forever grateful to you both. You have no idea what you saved me from, but Daisy did. I hope she knows how much she means to me. With love, Lily." I sat in silence after reading her letter. Daisy had done so much more than I had ever realized. She had been more than just a protector. She had given a woman the courage to take control of her life again. It was a powerful reminder that sometimes one act of kindness can set off a chain of events that changes everything. As I held the letter in my hands, I looked down at Daisy, who was resting peacefully at my feet. She lifted her head, sensing I was upset, and walked over to nuzzle my hand. Her eyes, full of love and understanding, seemed to say, "I'm here for you, always." And I knew without a doubt that no matter where life took us next, I would always have her by my side. As the months went by, Daisy's presence in my life only grew more meaningful. I started to feel like I was truly living alongside her, rather than just sharing space. She had this calming energy that grounded me, reminding me of the little things I had been overlooking in the chaos of life. Everything felt brighter when she was near, and I began to appreciate how much she had truly saved me, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally as well. One quiet afternoon, I took Daisy to the park. We were sitting on our usual bench, the sun casting a warm glow over the grass, when I saw a familiar face walking toward us. It was Tom, the man Daisy had saved from the heart attack a while back. He smiled when he saw us, and Daisy, as if recognizing him immediately, stood up and trotted over to him. Tom crouched down to pet her, his face lighting up as she greeted him. "Hey there, buddy," he said, his voice warm. "How's my hero doing?" I smiled and joined them. "She's doing great, as always. How about you? Feeling good?" Tom nodded, standing up with a grateful expression. "I'm doing well, all thanks to her." He paused for a moment before continuing. "I actually wanted to ask you something. I've been thinking a lot about what Daisy did for me, and it changed my whole perspective. I know it's crazy, but I've decided to start a foundation for heart attack survivors, helping them with emotional support and recovery, and I was hoping you'd let Daisy be the mascot." I was taken aback, but I could see the sincerity in Tom's eyes. He wasn't just talking about gratitude, he was talking about a mission. Daisy had become more than just a savior to him. She had inspired him to make a difference in the lives of others, just as she had done for him. I looked at Daisy, who was now sitting at Tom's feet, wagging her tail. It felt right. Daisy had already touched so many lives, and this was just another way for her to keep doing it. "Of course," I said, my voice filled with pride. "Daisy would be honored." In the weeks that followed, things began to shift in a way I never could have anticipated. Tom's foundation took off, and Daisy became its symbol, its face, its heart. She was more than just a dog, she was a beacon of hope, showing others that life could still be beautiful, even after the most terrifying of moments. The foundation began hosting events to raise awareness about heart attacks, recovery, and emotional healing. Daisy was there at every event, her calm presence comforting everyone she met. She became a therapy dog, not just for me, but for anyone who needed a little extra warmth, a gentle nudge to remind them they weren't alone. One afternoon, I went with Daisy to one of the Foundation's events in a small community center. There were people from all walks of life: heart attack survivors, their families, doctors, and volunteers. Everyone gathered to share stories and find strength in each other. Daisy walked into the room, tail wagging, and immediately made her way to a woman sitting alone at a table. I watched as the woman's face lit up, her sadness lifting just a little. Daisy sat next to her, resting her head on the table, and the woman began to stroke her fur. I could see tears in her eyes, but these weren't tears of sorrow. These were tears of comfort, of healing. Daisy had this magical way of connecting with people. It was like she understood them, understood their pain, and knew just how to help them bear it. Later that day, a man approached me, shaking my hand with a look of gratitude in his eyes. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said. "My wife had a heart attack a few months ago, and she's been struggling ever since. But after meeting Daisy today, she's been talking about going back to her exercise routine, about facing life again. You have no idea how much that means to us." I stood there, humbled, as Daisy went from person to person, comforting them, listening to their stories, and offering the kind of love only a dog could provide. I realized then that she wasn't just a dog to me. She was a lifeline for so many others, too. And as I looked at Daisy, her gentle eyes meeting mine, I felt that overwhelming sense of gratitude again. She had shown me what it truly meant to live with purpose. She wasn't just saving lives, she was changing them, one heart at a time. And I was lucky enough to be by her side, witnessing it all. One evening, several months after Daisy had become a well-known figure in the heart attack survivor community, something happened that left me speechless. I had just finished a long day of work and was walking Daisy through the neighborhood, as we always did. We were nearing the park when I noticed an unfamiliar car parked at the entrance. There were a few people standing near the entrance, looking toward us. As we got closer, One of them approached. He was a middle-aged man with a gentle smile. "Are you the owner of Daisy?" he asked, his voice filled with excitement. I nodded. "Yeah, that's her. What's going on?" The man introduced himself as James, and then he told me something that nearly knocked me off my feet. "You don't know me, but my wife and I have been following Daisy's story. We're both heart attack survivors, and we've been struggling with recovery, both physically and emotionally. We didn't know where to turn. I could feel my heart racing. I'm glad Daisy's story could help," I said, not fully understanding where this was going. He continued, "We came here today because we wanted to show you something." He then waved to the woman standing by the car, who was holding something in her hands. As she walked over, I saw that she was holding a small box. With trembling hands, she handed it to me. "This is for Daisy," she said softly. Confused, I opened the box, and inside I found a beautiful, hand-carved wooden plaque. The plaque read, "Daisy, the heart that heals." Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked at the plaque. The words weren't just a tribute to Daisy, they were a testament to the impact she had made on people's lives. James and his wife explained how Daisy's story had inspired them both to push through their darkest days and rediscover hope. They had even started attending group therapy together, and it was thanks to Daisy's bravery that they found the courage to take that first step. I looked down at Daisy, who was sitting calmly beside me, as if she knew exactly what was happening. "Daisy," I whispered, "you've done so much more than I could ever repay." She nudged my hand as if to say, "It's okay, this is what I was meant to do." As the years passed, Daisy and I continued our journey together. Her presence in my life had become something I couldn't imagine being without. She had brought not only healing and hope to others, but had also changed me in ways I never expected. One crisp morning, I woke up early and decided to take Daisy on a new route for our walk. It was still quiet outside, and the streets were covered in dew. As we wandered through the neighborhood, I couldn't help but think about how much Daisy had accomplished, how many lives she had touched. We passed the same park where we had first met Tom, and as we did, a small group of children waved at us. Daisy, as always, stopped to greet them, her tail wagging happily. I watched her interact with the kids, and I realized that even though she had already saved lives, she was still doing something incredible every day, bringing joy to people, one simple interaction at a time. I stopped for a moment, just watching her. She had been my rock, my protector, and my hero. I knew that no matter what came next, as long as I had Daisy by my side, I could face anything. As we continued our walk, I noticed Daisy slowing down, her steps becoming more deliberate. I knelt beside her, noticing the small signs, her graying muzzle, her gentle but slower pace. It hit me then with a quiet force that Daisy wasn't going to be here forever. The thought was overwhelming, and for the first time in years, I felt a weight I hadn't expected. But Daisy, as always, seemed to know exactly what I needed. She nudged my hand with her nose, her eyes soft and full of that unspoken understanding she always had. I stroked her fur, fighting back tears, and whispered, "You've done more than I could ever ask, Daisy." We sat there for a while, the world quiet around us. I thought about everything we had been through, every person we had met, every life she had touched. I realized that no matter what happened next, Daisy's legacy would live on in all the people whose hearts she had healed, people she had never even met, but had somehow changed forever. Daisy might not have been around forever, but her love, her strength, and her incredible heart would always be with me. And for that, I was endlessly grateful. A few months after that walk, Daisy's health started to decline more noticeably. She wasn't as energetic, and there were days when she struggled to keep up with our usual routine. Still, she remained by my side, and I tried to focus on the small, beautiful moments we had together, our quiet walks, the moments when she would curl up next to me in the evening, her head resting on my lap. I knew the inevitable was coming, but I wasn't ready to face it. How could I be? Daisy had been my constant for so long. She had saved lives, healed hearts, and showed me what unconditional love truly meant. She had given me a sense of purpose, of belonging. One afternoon, as we sat together in the sun, I realized I needed to make sure that Daisy's legacy lived on, that she was remembered for everything she had done, not just for me, but for everyone. She had been more than a dog. She had been a hero, a protector, and a source of light for so many. I began writing down our story, not just for me, but for everyone who had been touched by Daisy. I wanted her memory to live on, to inspire others the way she had inspired me. I knew it wasn't enough to just remember her. I wanted to share her story, to remind people that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change the world. As the days went by, I saw that Daisy, though tired, was content. She was ready, and so was I. I could never repay her for everything she had done, but I could honor her every day by living the way she had taught me, caring, loving, and giving without expecting anything in return. The day came when Daisy was too tired to get out of bed. I had known it was coming, but when I looked down at her, still and peaceful, a part of me couldn't believe it. She had been with me through so much, through the darkest times, through the highs and lows, and every moment in between. She had shown me how to love, how to be strong, and how to always keep moving forward. That evening, I sat beside her, holding her paw, whispering all the things I had never said before, but had felt every day. Thank you, Daisy, for everything, for being my hero, my best friend, my family. She looked up at me with those warm, familiar eyes as if she understood, and then she lay her head down peacefully, her body finally resting. It felt like the world paused for a moment, the noise of everyday life fading into the background. I knew that Daisy had left behind more than just memories. She had left a legacy, a reminder of how one small, brave soul could make the world a better place. She had healed hearts, saved lives, and changed me in ways I would never be able to express fully. But I could honor her. I could carry forward her spirit by living with the love and kindness she had shown me. As I held her one last time, I whispered, "I'll never forget you, Daisy. I'll keep you with me always." And though she was gone, I knew she would always be there, in every person whose life she had touched, like in every heart she had healed, and in every story she had inspired. Daisy was more than just a dog. She was a hero, and she always would be. In the weeks that followed Daisy's passing, life felt like it was missing something. Someone. The house was quieter without her, and the walks felt longer, emptier. But amidst the sadness, I found comfort in the stories people shared with me. Every person who had met Daisy, who had been touched by her gentle heart, reached out in their own way, offering condolences and sharing how she had changed their lives. Tom, who had once been saved by her, called to check on me. "I know it's tough, but remember, Daisy's spirit lives on in everyone she helped. She was more than just a dog. She was a force, and she made us all better." His words were true. I started to see Daisy's impact everywhere I went. The woman she had saved from an abusive relationship wrote me a letter, telling me that Daisy's bravery had given her the courage to move forward and build a life of her own. People who had met Daisy at events shared photos of her with their families, saying how much she had meant to them. Every story, every memory, filled the space she had left behind with light. I realized that though Daisy was no longer physically with me, her legacy was alive and well. She had touched more lives than I could ever imagine, and the love she had shared was still being carried forward. It was a reminder that sometimes, even after someone is gone, the love and kindness they spread never truly fades. It continues to grow like a ripple in water, touching more hearts as time goes on. And so, as I continued to live without her, I made a promise to Daisy that I would keep telling her story, that I would keep spreading the love and kindness she had taught me. I knew that in some way she would always be with me, living on through the people she had saved and the hearts she had healed. And that thought, though bittersweet, brought me peace, because Daisy would never truly be gone. She would live on in the legacy of love she had built. Months passed, and while the pain of losing Daisy never fully disappeared, I began to heal in ways I didn't expect. Every time I thought of her, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Daisy had given me so much, and I realized that I had to honor her memory by continuing to live with the same love and courage she had shown every single day. One afternoon, as I sat on the porch, thinking about her, I decided to take a step I had been putting off for a while. It was time to visit the animal shelter where Daisy had once been adopted. I had always wanted to give back, to do something that would help other dogs find the same kind of love Daisy had given me. I knew Daisy would have wanted that too. When I arrived, the shelter staff recognized me right away. They smiled warmly, and I told them that I wanted to contribute. I shared Daisy's story, how she had saved lives, healed hearts, and changed mine forever. The shelter staff listened intently, and afterward, they told me that they had seen how much Daisy had inspired the community, and they wanted to create a special adoption program in her honor. Together, we worked on a plan to start a Daisy Fund, a program to help families adopt rescue dogs and support heart attack survivors who wanted therapy dogs, just like Daisy had been for me. It felt like the right thing to do, like a way to give other dogs and people the chance to experience the healing power Daisy had brought into my life. As I left the shelter that day, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't about replacing Daisy. It was about keeping her spirit alive by spreading the love she had given so freely. I knew she would have been proud of the impact her story had and the lives that would be changed because of it. And so, in a way, Daisy was still saving lives, still touching hearts, even after she was gone. She had left behind something beautiful, something that would continue to grow, and I knew that her legacy would live on, inspiring others just as she had inspired me. A year passed since Daisy's passing, and life slowly returned to its rhythm. I kept myself busy with the Daisy Fund and the adoption program, and it was rewarding to see how many families found new hope and love through the dogs they rescued. Every time someone adopted a dog through the program, I thought of Daisy. I thought of the love she had given and how that love was being passed on from one heart to another. One day, as I was going through the applications for a new dog adoption, I came across a photo of a small, nervous looking puppy. She was a scruffy little thing, her eyes wide and filled with uncertainty. Her fur was matted, and she looked like she had been through more than her fair share of challenges. Her name was Bella. Something about her picture stopped me in my tracks. It reminded me so much of how Daisy had looked when I first brought her home. The same vulnerability, the same need for trust, the same quiet strength just beneath the surface. I felt an overwhelming urge to meet her. I drove to the shelter that afternoon, and when I saw Bella in person, I immediately understood why she had caught my eye. She was small, timid, and unsure of everything around her. But when she saw me, she came to me slowly, cautiously, her tail wagging just a little. She was still uncertain, but there was a spark of hope in her eyes, just like there had been in Daisy's. I sat down on the floor, and Bella came closer, sniffing my hand before finally leaning into me. The moment was quiet but powerful. I knew, without a doubt, that this was meant to be. Bella was the one. I could see how much she needed a chance, just like Daisy had needed a chance all those years ago. I adopted her that day, and as I walked out of the shelter with her by my side, I felt a sense of calm. I wasn't trying to replace Daisy. I could never do that. But Bella was a new chapter, a new story, and I knew she had something special within her. Just like Daisy, she would teach me, love me, and show me what it meant to give without expecting anything in return. In time, Bella began to settle into her new life. She was still timid, still unsure of herself, but every day I saw a little more of the dog she was meant to become. And every day, I couldn't help but think that Daisy, in her own way, was watching over us, guiding me to this new chapter. The love I had given Daisy and the love Daisy had given me was now being passed forward to Bella. It was as if Daisy's spirit was alive, continuing her work, continuing to heal. And in that, I realized that love in its purest form never truly fades. It simply moves forward, finding new hearts, new lives to touch, and new stories to be told. As the months went on, Bella slowly began to open up. She was a completely different dog from Daisy, shyer, more reserved, but I could see the same quiet strength in her. She didn't need to be a hero like Daisy had been. She had her own path to walk, and I knew it was going to be just as special. One afternoon, while we were out on our walk, we met an older couple sitting on a bench in the park. The woman looked at Bella with a soft smile. "She reminds me of our dog," she said, her voice tinged with sadness. "He passed away a few months ago, and I miss him every day." I could see the pain in her eyes, and without thinking, Bella walked right up to her and sat down next to her. The woman's expression softened, and she began to pet Bella, who sat calmly, allowing herself to be a comfort. It was in that moment that I realized Bella, like Daisy, had a unique ability to bring peace to those around her. As we left the park that day, I felt a warmth in my heart. Bella was beginning to find her own way, and in doing so, she was continuing Daisy's legacy of kindness and love. A few weeks later, Bella had become more comfortable in her new life. She was no longer the nervous, uncertain puppy I had first met. She had started to trust me fully, and I could see her begin to enjoy life more. We had our daily routines just like I had with Daisy, and there was a peaceful rhythm to our days. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I noticed how much Bella had settled into her own quiet presence. She wasn't a replacement for Daisy, but she had carved her own place in my heart. I could see how much she had to offer, her own form of love, her own way of healing. As I looked down at her, I smiled softly. "You're something special, aren't you?" I whispered. Bella lifted her head, her eyes soft and trusting. She didn't need to say anything. Her presence was enough. And in that moment, I realized that love doesn't have to be the same to be just as powerful. Bella might not have been a hero in the same way Daisy was, but she was a hero in her own quiet way, bringing comfort and peace to everyone she met. And that was more than enough. One chilly morning, as I took Bella for our walk, we passed the same park where Daisy had once made such a difference in so many lives. Bella, now more confident and sure of herself, pulled ahead as she caught sight of a familiar sight, a family sitting on the same bench where we had met the older couple months ago. They looked weary, their faces drawn with exhaustion, and I saw the woman wiping away a tear as her husband gently held her hand. Bella, sensing the sadness in the air, stopped in her tracks and turned to me. Without hesitation, she walked toward the couple. I followed quietly, watching as Bella sat down beside them, her presence calming, almost like she knew exactly what they needed. The woman looked up, surprised to see Bella approach. "Oh," she said softly, "this must be a sign." She reached out to pet Bella, and the dog leaned into her touch, offering the same warmth and comfort Daisy had once given to so many. Bella sat there quietly, and I watched as the woman's expression softened, the sorrow easing from her face, even if just a little. It was one of those moments that reminded me of Daisy, how she had always known what people needed without a word being spoken. The couple smiled, their grief lightened by Bella's simple act of companionship. I realized then that Bella wasn't trying to fill the space Daisy had left. She was carving out her own, one that was just as meaningful. We left the park with a quiet peace between us, Bella walking beside me, her tail wagging slowly. I didn't need any more validation than the calm I felt in my heart. Bella was still finding her own way, and in doing so, she was creating her own kind of magic. As Bella and I continued our journey together, I started to notice how much her presence was affecting my own healing. It wasn't immediate, but there was something comforting about her quiet, steady companionship. Every day we would go on walks, and I began to notice the little things, how the morning sunlight would filter through the trees, how the air smelled fresh and clean, and how Bella would occasionally look up at me with her soft, trusting eyes, as if to remind me that everything was okay. One afternoon, I took Bella to a nearby cafe with a small outdoor patio. It was something I used to do with Daisy, and though it felt strange to be there without her, I wanted to continue the tradition. As we sat down at a table outside, a couple sitting nearby noticed Bella. They smiled at her, then at me. "That's a beautiful dog," the woman said. "What's her name?" "Her name's Bella," I replied. "She's still settling in, but she's been such a good girl." The woman's eyes softened. "We've been thinking about adopting a dog for a while. We lost ours not too long ago, and it's been hard." I nodded, knowing exactly what they were going through. "I understand," I said quietly. "It's tough, but you'll know when it's the right time. You'll find the right dog." Bella, sensing their sadness, walked over to the woman, sitting down beside her and offering a soft nudge. The woman's expression changed, her eyes filling with tears as she reached down to pet Bella. "I think she just gave me my answer," the woman whispered, a small bittersweet smile tugging at her lips. It was in that moment I realized how much Bella had become more than just my companion. She had found her way into the hearts of others too, just like Daisy had. And while Bella may never have the same kind of heroism Daisy did, she had an incredible gift, the ability to offer comfort and healing without even trying. I smiled to myself as we left the cafe. Bella had made a difference today. just by being her gentle self. And as we walked home together, I couldn't help but feel thankful for the way life always seemed to surprise me, giving me exactly what I needed when I least expected it. As the seasons shifted, Bella and I settled into a deeper rhythm. I began to notice that she was not just becoming more comfortable with me, but also with the world around her. She had always been a little reserved, but with each passing day, she grew braver, more outgoing. She would wag her tail more freely, offer a gentle nudge to strangers, and seem to sense when someone needed a little extra comfort. One evening, I decided to take her to the park to watch the sunset. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, and the park was quiet, just the way we liked it. As we walked along the path, I noticed a young man sitting alone on a bench, staring out into the distance. He looked lost in thought, his shoulders slumped with what seemed like a heavy burden. Bella, as if sensing his sadness, walked up to him, sitting down quietly at his feet. He looked down, startled at first, but then he smiled softly as Bella nudged his hand. "Hey there, girl," he whispered, scratching her ears. "What are you doing here all by yourself?" I watched from a distance, unsure whether I should intervene, but then I saw the way Bella was responding. She wasn't pushing him to talk, but simply offering him her presence, her quiet companionship. After a few minutes, the man spoke, his voice low and hesitant. "I've been feeling pretty down lately. Lost my job, and things just haven't been going right." I could hear the pain in his voice, and yet there was something in his words that hinted at hope, too. Bella, sensing that hope, leaned her head into his lap, her warmth offering him comfort. The man stroked her fur, and for a moment I saw his shoulders relax, the weight of his thoughts lifting just a little. Eventually, he turned to me and smiled. "She's something special, isn't she?" I nodded. "She has a way of knowing when someone needs her." He sighed, his face softening. "I think I needed this today." After a few more moments, Bella stood up and turned back to me, waiting as if she had done her job. I walked over to the man and nodded to him. "I'm glad Bella could help." He stood up, looking more at peace than when I had first seen him. "Thank you both. I'm going to be okay." As Bella and I walked away, I realized how much more she had to offer than I ever expected. Bella had that quiet gift, just like Daisy had. She didn't need to perform grand gestures or save lives in dramatic ways. She was healing in her own way, one quiet moment at a time, and I couldn't have been prouder of her. A few weeks later, I decided to take Bella on a weekend trip to a nearby hiking trail. It was a quiet, peaceful place, perfect for getting away from the usual routine. Bella loved being outside, and I knew the fresh air would do both of us good. As we made our way through the wooded path, I noticed how much Bella had grown. She was still cautious at times, but her confidence had blossomed. She trotted ahead, her tail wagging as she explored, her ears perked up at every new sound. She was fully in her element. About halfway through our hike, we came across an elderly man sitting on a rock, looking out at the view. He seemed deep in thought, and I felt an odd pull to stop and say hello. Bella, as usual, sensed the man's quiet energy and walked straight to him. She sat beside him, her head resting gently on his knee. The man looked down at Bella, and a small smile appeared on his face. "Well, aren't you a friendly one?" he murmured, reaching out to pet her. I watched as Bella, without hesitation, leaned into his touch, offering him the same comfort she always gave to those who needed it. After a while, the man spoke. "I've been coming here for years," he said slowly, "but it's been hard lately. My wife passed away a few months ago, and I don't know how to keep going." I could hear the sorrow in his voice, but there was something else too, a quiet sense of longing, as though he was waiting for something to change. Bella, sensing his need, lay down at his feet, offering him a comforting presence. The man sat in silence, gently stroking her fur. I stood back, letting them have their space. There was no rush, no need for words. Bella was doing exactly what she was meant to do, being there, providing peace. When the man finally stood up, he looked at me with gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice steadier than it had been before. She gave me more comfort than I thought I'd find today. As we walked away from the trail, Bella by my side, I realized just how much of an impact she was making, one quiet act of kindness at a time. She wasn't just healing me, she was helping heal everyone she met, simply by being herself. And in that, I knew she was fulfilling her own special purpose. As we rounded the corner, my thoughts raced. I wasn't sure what to do next, but I knew I had to stay vigilant. I didn't want to go back home just yet, not with the man so close by. Daisy, as always, stayed at my side, her alertness matching mine. She didn't relax, not even for a moment, her eyes scanning every direction. I picked up the pace, walking faster, but still trying not to make it obvious that I was avoiding the man. I didn't want to draw attention to myself, but I also didn't want to run. That would only make things worse. I kept my grip on Daisy's leash tight, making sure she stayed close as we turned onto another street. I glanced over my shoulder one last time and saw that the man had started walking again, slowly following us at a distance. My stomach churned and panic began to set in. What did he want? Why was he following us now? Was this really happening? Daisy's posture stiffened and she stopped in her tracks, looking up at me as if to say, "I'll protect you no matter what." Her calmness, in contrast to my own growing anxiety, reminded me that I had to stay strong. She was my rock. She had been since the very first moment I'd met her, and she would be until the end. I turned down a quieter street, hoping the man would lose track of us. I tried to keep my breathing steady, but it wasn't easy. Every step felt heavier, like the weight of the world was pressing down on me. What was I supposed to do now? Just then, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind us. The man had quickened his pace, he was getting closer. As the seasons changed, Bella and I continued to grow together. Every day, she reminded me of the beauty in simple moments, the way she'd curl up next to me on the couch, or how she'd greet me with such enthusiasm after a long day. It wasn't the grand gestures, but the quiet companionship that truly meant the most. One afternoon, I took Bella to a small local bookstore that allowed dogs. She always enjoyed our visits, trotting alongside me as I browsed the shelves. On that day, as we entered the store, I noticed an older woman standing by the counter, her eyes filled with sadness as she looked at a photograph. Bella, sensing the woman's sorrow, walked up to her and sat quietly at her feet. The woman looked down in surprise, then smiled softly. "Well, hello there, sweetheart," she murmured, bending down to pet Bella. I watched quietly as the woman's expression shifted. Bella nudged her hand, offering comfort without a word. The woman's smile grew a little wider as she continued to pet her. "I lost my dog last week," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I've been having a hard time." I approached slowly, not wanting to intrude. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said gently. "Losing a pet is never easy." The woman nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "But somehow, Bella has made today a little bit easier. She reminds me of my old dog, always so gentle and kind." Bella sat patiently by her side, is offering the kind of quiet comfort only a dog can give. After a few moments, the woman stood up and smiled at me. "Thank you for bringing her here. She's made a difference today." As we left the store, I couldn't help but feel that Bella, in her quiet way, had touched yet another life. She was more than just my companion. She was spreading kindness and healing in ways I couldn't have imagined, and for that I was endlessly grateful. A few weeks later, Bella and I had another quiet day at the park. The weather was crisp and the air smelled fresh with the early signs of fall. As we walked along our usual path, I noticed a young woman sitting on a bench, her face buried in her hands. She seemed lost in her thoughts, her shoulders shaking slightly. Bella, ever intuitive, stopped and looked up at me as if asking for permission. I nodded, and without hesitation, she trotted over to the woman and sat next to her, resting her head gently on the woman's knee. The woman looked up in surprise, and for a moment, her expression softened. "Hey there," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "What are you doing here?" Bella gave a small whine, and the woman reached down to pet her, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. I stood at a distance, not wanting to intrude, but I couldn't help but notice the shift in the woman's demeanor as she stroked Bella's fur. After a few moments, the woman looked up at me. "I didn't expect this," she said quietly. "I've been really struggling lately, lost my job, and things just feel like they're falling apart. But having her here, I don't know, it helps." I smiled softly. "Bella has a way of doing that," I said, my voice gentle. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I think I needed this. Thank you." Bella looked up at me as if to say, "It's what I do." She had once again brought comfort without needing to say a word, and I felt proud of her quiet strength. As we walked away, I realized that Bella was teaching me something new every day. It wasn't always about doing something grand. It was about simply being there for others in their quiet moments of need. And in doing so, she was continuing the legacy of love and healing that Daisy had begun. As the months went by, Bella and I found ourselves in a gentle rhythm. She had become not just my companion, but a quiet source of strength for others, much like Daisy had been. Bella's ability to offer comfort without words was becoming more apparent every day, and it was something I couldn't take for granted. One afternoon, as we walked along a new trail near the edge of town, I noticed a young man sitting by the side of the path, his head down, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Bella, sensing his distress, immediately trotted over to him and sat at his feet. The man looked up, startled, and I saw the exhaustion in his eyes. "Hey, buddy," he murmured softly, reaching down to pet her. "I guess you're here to help me, huh?" I stood a little further away, giving him space, but I could see Bella's calm presence making a difference. The man sighed deeply, running his hand through Bella's fur. "I don't even know what to do anymore. Everything feels like it's falling apart. I just needed a moment to breathe." Bella sat still, leaning against his leg, as if telling him that it was okay to feel lost. Sometimes the best thing was just to be still. After a while, the man looked up at me, his eyes a little clearer. "I think I needed that. Just someone to listen, I guess." I smiled softly. "She's always here to listen." As we continued our walk, Bella by my side, I realized that her ability to simply be present was more powerful than I had ever imagined. She wasn't trying to fix anyone's problems, she was simply offering them space to heal. And in doing so, she was becoming more than just a dog to me. She was a quiet reminder that sometimes the best way to help someone was just to show up. A few weeks later, Bella and I were at the local cafe, enjoying a quiet afternoon. The place was bustling, with people talking, laughing, and sipping coffee. Bella sat by my side, content, her eyes watching the world go by. I couldn't help but feel grateful for the peace she brought into my life. As we were getting ready to leave, a young woman approached us. She had a nervous smile on her face, and I could see the hesitation in her eyes. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said softly, "right? But I just wanted to say that your dog is beautiful." I smiled. "Thank you. Her name's Bella." The woman's eyes softened as she looked down at Bella. "I don't know if you'll understand, but she reminds me so much of my old dog. I lost him recently, and it's been really hard. He was my best friend, and I haven't been able to find the courage to adopt again." I nodded, understanding the pain in her voice. "It's never easy. I lost a dog too, and it's tough to even think about moving forward." Bella, sensing her sadness, walked over to the woman and gently nudged her hand. The woman's eyes filled with tears as she reached down to pet Bella. "Thank you," she whispered. I think, I think I needed this." Bella sat with her for a few moments, offering the kind of comfort she always gave. It was the same gentle presence, the same quiet strength. I watched, knowing that Bella, in her own subtle way, was helping her heal, just as she had done for so many others. When the woman finally stood up, she smiled, her face lighter than before. "I think I'm ready to adopt again," she said, her voice steadier. "Thank you for letting me meet Bella." As we left the cafe, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. Bella wasn't just with me. She was out there, making a difference in ways I could never fully comprehend. And that was enough for me. The following days felt calm, but I noticed Bella becoming more attuned to people around us. It was as if she knew that every interaction, every moment, had a purpose. She was more than just a companion. She was a healer, a quiet force that had been sent to show others that they weren't alone. One afternoon, while we were walking through the park, we came across a man sitting on a bench, holding a crumpled tissue in his hands. He looked down at the ground, his shoulders slumped. I could sense the heaviness in the air, and Bella, as if drawn to him, walked toward him without hesitation. The man looked up, startled at first, but then his expression softened when he saw Bella. He reached out a hand, and Bella immediately sat beside him, her gentle eyes meeting his. For a few moments, they just sat there, connected in a way that needed no words. I kept a respectful distance, knowing that sometimes silence was all that was needed. After a while, the man looked at me, his face a little less burdened. "I've been having a rough time," he said quietly. "Lost my job, lost a friend. I feel like everything's falling apart." Bella nudged his hand as if offering him comfort without saying a word. The man sighed deeply, and for the first time in what seemed like a long while, smiled faintly. I didn't expect this, but I think it's what I needed. As we continued our walk, Bella trotting beside me, I realized something profound. She didn't need to fix people's problems. She didn't need to change their circumstances. She only needed to be there, to offer her quiet, unconditional love. And in doing so, she was helping people find their strength again. And that was more powerful than anything else. As time passed, Bella and I found ourselves becoming more deeply intertwined with the community. Every time we went out, it felt like Bella was weaving her way into someone's heart, offering the kind of solace that only a dog could provide. It wasn't about big gestures, but rather the quiet moments that left lasting impressions. One crisp afternoon, we were walking near the river when we spotted a couple sitting on a bench, holding hands but not saying much. The woman's face was turned toward the water, but there was something distant in her expression. Bella, ever perceptive, paused for a moment before heading directly toward the couple. The man noticed her first. "Hey there, girl," he said with a soft chuckle, but it was clear that his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Bella trotted right up to them, sitting down between them as if inviting them into her space. The woman looked down at her, her eyes softening just a bit. Bella leaned against her leg, offering the same calm presence she always did. I stood back, giving them their space, watching as the couple seemed to soften in her company. There was no rush, no pressure, just the quiet comfort that Bella gave so effortlessly. After a few minutes, the woman spoke, her voice low and hesitant. "I think we're just trying to figure things out," she said, glancing at the man beside her. "Life's been hard lately. We lost a child a few months ago, and we don't really know how to move forward." The man squeezed her hand gently, his voice barely a whisper. "It feels like we've just been stuck." I could see the pain in their eyes, but Bella remained steady, her gentle presence offering a quiet refuge. The woman stroked Bella's fur, the tears she'd been holding back starting to fall. There was no rush to stop her. Bella just stayed there, offering what she always had, a moment of peace, a gentle reminder that it was okay to feel lost and that they didn't have to go through it alone. As we left the park that day, I reflected on how Bella had been a bridge, connecting people who were struggling even without saying a word. She had done what I could never have done, given others a space to process their grief, to feel understood, and to know that healing takes time. A few weeks later, as winter settled in and the first snow of the season blanketed the town, I found myself reflecting on how much Bella had grown, both in spirit and in the way she touched others. It was hard to believe that she had come into my life so uncertain, so quiet. Now she was a dog full of confidence, a steady presence in my life and in the lives of so many others. One snowy afternoon, I took Bella to a local bakery known for its cozy atmosphere and friendly staff. As we entered, the warm scent of baked goods filled the air, and Bella trotted happily toward the counter, where the owner, Claire, greeted us with a big smile. "I swear she gets more beautiful every time I see her," Claire said, bending down to pet Bella, who wagged her tail happily. "We're just here for some treats," I replied, but before I could finish, I noticed a man sitting by the window, his head down, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. He looked exhausted, worn out by something that was heavy on his mind. Bella, sensing the quiet sadness around him, walked right over to his table and sat down at his feet, looking up at him with those deep, understanding eyes. The man barely looked up at first, but after a moment his gaze shifted downward and he gently reached down to pet her. I watched from a distance as Bella sat still, her presence calming and steady. The man seemed to relax just a little, his shoulders loosening as he stroked her fur. Eventually, he looked up at me, his face softer than when I had first seen him. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to interrupt your day." "No interruption at all," I replied. "Bella's always happy to make a new friend." He chuckled softly, then sighed. I just, I don't know how to deal with all this. I lost my wife recently, and it's been really hard. I've been trying to get back to normal, but it feels like I'm stuck." Bella gave a gentle whine, and he smiled faintly as he stroked her head. "You know," he said, "she's got a way of making everything feel a little less heavy." I nodded. She's been doing that for a long time now. The man looked at Bella, his eyes more at peace than they had been when we first entered the bakery. Thank you, Bella, he whispered, his voice filled with gratitude. I think, I think I'm going to be okay. As we left the bakery, Bella trotting beside me, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the way she had quietly made a difference in yet another person's life. Her presence was a reminder that sometimes just being there for someone, without any words, was the most powerful thing we could do. And as long as she was with me, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be. As winter continued to blanket the town, Bella and I settled into a peaceful rhythm. The days were quieter, but I noticed that Bella had this ability to bring warmth into every room we entered, even on the coldest days. She was my constant, my companion, and through her gentle nature, she continued to offer that same peace to everyone she met. One evening, after a light snowfall, we decided to take a walk through the park. The world around us felt like a quiet winter wonderland, everything covered in a soft layer of snow, the air crisp and fresh. Bella trotted ahead, her breath puffing out in little clouds, her tail wagging with excitement. As we neared the benches by the frozen pond, I noticed a young woman sitting alone. She looked to be in her late 20s, wrapped in a heavy coat, staring out across the snow-covered ice. There was something about her posture, her shoulders slumped, her eyes distant, that told me she was carrying a heavy weight. Bella, ever intuitive, paused for a moment before walking over to her. She sat quietly by the woman's feet, just waiting. After a few moments, the woman looked down, her eyes softening as she noticed Bella. Hey there, girl, she murmured, reaching down to pet Bella, who immediately leaned into her touch, offering her usual quiet comfort. I stood back a bit, allowing the woman's space, but I couldn't help but watch. Bella's gentle presence had a way of breaking down walls, allowing people to open up even without speaking. After a while, the woman sighed deeply and looked up at me. I'm sorry, she said, her voice a little shaky. I didn't expect to be found today. I smiled softly. It's okay. Bella has a way of finding the people who need her. The woman smiled faintly and wiped her eyes, her voice growing steadier. I lost my father last year, and I haven't been able to move past it. It's like I've been stuck, you know? I don't know how to let go. I nodded, understanding the grief she was carrying. It's not easy, but it's okay to feel stuck. It's part of the process. And sometimes the hardest part is just finding a little moment of peace. Bella, sensing the shift in the woman's mood, nuzzled her hand, her presence a quiet but powerful reminder that she wasn't alone in her pain. The woman stroked Bella's fur for a few more minutes, and I could see the tension in her face start to ease. Finally, the woman looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. Thank you. I didn't realize how much I needed this. I nodded, a warmth filling my chest. Bella's always here to help. She's a good listener. As we walked away from the park, I felt that familiar sense of peace. Bella had once again done what I could never have done, given someone the space to heal, to feel understood. She didn't need to fix their problems, she just needed to be present. And in that, she was making a difference every single day. As the days grew shorter and the holidays approached, Bella and I settled into a quiet routine. The world outside was cold, but inside there was warmth in the small moments we shared. Every evening we would sit by the fireplace, Bella curled up beside me, and I found peace in the stillness. There was something calming about the winter, a chance to reflect on the past year and all that had happened. One afternoon, I decided to visit a local volunteer shelter where I had been helping out occasionally. It was a place that took in both people and animals, offering them support in different ways. I'd often brought Bella with me, as her presence had a soothing effect on both the staff and the people there. Today, I thought, would be another good day to share some time with them. When we arrived, Bella immediately trotted over to the familiar faces, tail wagging was as if she knew exactly where she was. The staff greeted her with affection, and I couldn't help but smile. It was as if Bella had become a little beacon of light in this place, offering comfort to everyone she encountered. We were introduced to a new visitor, a man in his early 30s who had recently come to the shelter for support. He was sitting on one of the couches, looking distant, his eyes reflecting a deep sadness. I recognized that look. He was going through something painful, but perhaps not yet ready to talk about it. Bella, as if sensing his need, walked over to him and sat beside his feet. The man looked up, startled at first, but then smiled softly as Bella nudged his hand. He hesitated for a moment, unsure, but then gently reached down to pet her. Bella leaned into him, offering her quiet, gentle presence. I quietly approached, giving the man space to take in the moment. After a few minutes, he sighed deeply, looking up at me. I haven't had a dog in years, he said softly, but there's something about her. She makes me feel like maybe it's going to be okay. I nodded, understanding. Sometimes all it takes is being here, in the moment, with someone who understands, even without words. The man's smile grew a little more genuine, and he scratched Bella behind the ears. I think I needed this, he said, his voice steadying. As we left the shelter that day, Bella trotting happily by my side, I felt a deep sense of pride and gratitude. Bella wasn't just my companion, she was a healing presence for so many others. Through her quiet acts of kindness, she reminded people that they weren't alone and that sometimes all you need is a moment of connection to start healing. The more I saw her touch lives, the more I realized just how much of a difference one dog, one simple act of love, could make in the world. And I felt incredibly lucky to have her by my side. The days leading up to the new year felt peaceful. Bella and I had fallen into a comforting routine. Every morning, we'd take a walk through the quiet streets, and each evening, we'd sit together as the world outside turned colder. It was simple, but it felt right. One afternoon, while we were at the park, we noticed a family sitting together on a bench, their eyes heavy with sadness. The father had his arm around his wife, and their teenage daughter looked down at the ground. Bella, as always, sensed their quiet sorrow and trotted over to them. Without hesitation, she sat at their feet, her head resting gently on the mother's lap. The family looked up in surprise, but then they softened, the tension in their faces easing just a little. The mother began to stroke Bella's fur, her hand trembling slightly. She's so calm, she said quietly. We've had a rough year, but she makes everything feel a little lighter. I stood back, allowing them to take in the moment. Bella didn't try to do anything grand. She simply sat there, offering what she always did, unconditional presence. After a while, the father looked up at me, his eyes full of gratitude. Thank you for bringing her here. She's exactly what we needed today. I smiled softly, feeling proud of Bella. As we walked away, I realized that no matter how small, each moment of kindness mattered. Bella had once again reminded someone that, even in the toughest times, a simple act of love could make all the difference. As the new year began, Bella and I spent more time outdoors, soaking in the quiet, serene moments that winter offered. The snow had melted, leaving the streets damp and the trees bare. There was a calmness to it all, and I found myself reflecting on how far Bella had come since she entered my life. She had grown into such a gentle soul, always in tune with the needs of others, always offering comfort. One afternoon, while walking near the edge of the town, we came across an elderly man sitting alone on a bench by the lake. His face was etched with lines of age and sorrow, and I could see the weariness in his eyes. He was lost in thought, staring out across the water. Bella, as if knowing, walked straight up to him, sitting at his feet and looking up at him with those soulful eyes. The man's gaze slowly shifted downward, and a soft smile appeared on his face as he reached down to pet Bella. He seemed to breathe a little easier. You're a good dog, he murmured, scratching her ears. I've had a lot of lonely days. My wife passed away a while back, and it's been hard to get used to life without her. I watched quietly, understanding the deep pain that lingered in his voice. Bella sat calmly at his side, offering the simple comfort that she did so well. After a long pause, the man looked at me, his eyes softer. I don't know what it is about her, but I feel a little less lonely now. I smiled gently. She has a way of doing that, I said, my voice low. The man nodded, his eyes beginning to glisten with tears. Thank you for bringing her here. It feels like she knows exactly what I need. Bella didn't need to say a word. She had given him what he needed in that moment: companionship, warmth, and a reminder that even in our darkest times, we're not alone. As we left the park, I realized that Bella's quiet way of healing others was something truly special. She wasn't just part of my world, she was changing lives, one quiet, loving moment at a time. The winter days continued to pass, and with each one, Bella seemed to grow even more attuned to the world around her. She was no longer just my companion, she had become a source of healing for so many people. It was something I had never expected, but I felt incredibly grateful to witness it. One morning, as we walked through the neighborhood, we noticed a woman sitting on the front steps of her house. Her shoulders were hunched, and she appeared to be staring at the ground, lost in thought. Bella, always sensitive to the needs of others, immediately walked up to her, sitting down quietly at her feet. The woman looked up in surprise, her eyes red from crying. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, clearly trying to compose herself. Without saying a word, Bella gently nudged her hand. The woman's gaze softened as she reached down to pet Bella, the warmth of her touch calming her in an unexpected way. I stood back, giving them space, watching as Bella remained steady and calm. It was as though Bella knew exactly how to help without pushing, without speaking. She simply offered herself, her presence, her quiet companionship, and in that she was giving the woman something she desperately needed. After a while, the woman looked up at me, her eyes still teary, but brighter. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what it is about her, but she makes everything feel a little lighter." I've been struggling with so much lately. Lost my job, dealing with a divorce, and I didn't know how much I needed this. I smiled gently. She has a way of offering comfort without saying a word. The woman gave Bella one last scratch behind the ears before standing up. "Thank you for bringing her here today. I think I'll be okay now." As we walked away, Bella trotting happily beside me, I realized how much of an impact one dog could make. Bella didn't need to fix anyone's problems, she just needed to be there. And in doing so, she gave others the space to heal, to find a moment of peace amidst their struggles. That, I realized, was enough. As the months passed, the days grew longer, and the coldness of winter began to fade. Bella and I had gone through many seasons together, but something felt different now. I noticed how much she had changed my life, not just by being a source of comfort, but by teaching me the value of kindness, patience, and presence. One bright spring morning, Bella and I took a walk through the town square. It was filled with the energy of people out enjoying the sun, children running and playing, and the occasional passerby stopping to greet us. But as we strolled, I noticed an older man sitting on a bench near the fountain, staring out at the water, his face etched with sorrow. His hands were tightly gripping the edges of the bench as if holding on to something invisible. Bella, sensing his need, walked directly toward him, sitting down quietly at his feet, her calm presence filling the air. The man looked down at her, his face softening almost immediately. For a moment, he didn't say anything. He just reached down and began to pet Bella gently, his grip on the bench loosening. I took a step back, giving them space, watching the silent exchange between them. Bella didn't need to do anything more than be there, just as she always had done. After a while, the man looked up at me, his eyes tired but somehow brighter. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to seem so lost." I shook my head, offering a small smile. "There's no need to apologize. Bella has a way of helping people, just by being there." The man nodded slowly, his voice steadying. "My wife passed away last year, and I've been struggling to keep going. I don't know how to fill the emptiness, but for the first time in a long while, I feel a little less alone." Bella's tail gave a gentle wag, as if she understood the weight of his words. She was the kind of dog that didn't need to speak. Her presence said it all. The man stood up, looking at Bella one last time. "Thank you. I didn't think a dog could make such a difference, but she's reminded me that sometimes it's the small things that matter most." I smiled, watching as he slowly walked away, a little lighter than when he had arrived. Bella stayed by my side, her eyes as calm and understanding as always. As we walked away, I couldn't help but feel thankful. Bella had done what I couldn't. She had offered peace, comfort, and understanding in a way that no one else could. It was moments like this, I realized, that made all the difference. Sometimes all it took was being there, offering a quiet presence, and letting others know they weren't alone. And with Bella by my side, I knew I was never truly alone either. As the year moved forward, I started to realize that Bella had become much more than a companion to me. She had become a part of the community, a gentle force that connected people, one quiet moment at a time. The way she comforted, listened, and simply existed was a reminder to me of how important it was to be present in the lives of others. It wasn't about grand gestures or solving problems. It was about offering love and support in ways that sometimes words couldn't express. One evening, we sat in the park as the sun dipped below the horizon. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, and everything felt peaceful. Bella lay beside me, her head resting on my lap, and I ran my fingers through her fur, reflecting on everything we had shared. She had been with me through some of my darkest days, never asking for anything in return except companionship, and in doing so had changed my life in ways I couldn't even begin to describe. I looked down at her and smiled. "You've taught me so much, haven't you?" I whispered, my voice soft. Bella lifted her head, her eyes meeting mine as if she understood every word. Her tail gave a gentle thump on the ground, and in that moment I realized how much she had taught me. Not just about love, but about healing, patience, and the importance of slowing down and appreciating the small moments. It was clear to me now that Bella had a purpose that went beyond just being a dog. She had been sent into my life to show me how to truly live, how to connect with others, and how to be kind and present in the world. And I knew, as I sat there with her, that I would carry the lessons she had taught me for the rest of my life. The sun finally set, and we stood up, ready to head home. Bella walked beside me, her step light and easy. There was no rush, no destination but where we were, together. I realized then that no matter what happened next, Bella had already given me everything I needed. Her presence in my life was enough, and I had no doubt that her legacy of kindness and love would continue to ripple out into the world, touching more hearts, just as she had touched mine. And so we walked home, side by side, knowing that our story together was far from over. Every day with Bella was a gift, and I would cherish it for as long as I could. As the months passed, Bella and I continued to share our quiet, beautiful moments together. Our routine remained simple, yet deeply meaningful. Every morning we would walk, every evening we would sit together. The connection we had was something that didn't need words. It was just understood, like a bond that had always been there long before we ever met. One afternoon, as the leaves began to change colors with the arrival of autumn, we took our usual walk through the park. The air was crisp, and the world felt fresh with possibility. As we walked down a familiar path, I noticed a young couple sitting on a bench near the fountain, their heads bowed, their hands intertwined. They looked like they were deep in conversation, but there was a sadness in the way they held themselves. Bella, ever intuitive, stopped beside me and looked over at them. Without a second thought, she trotted over, sitting quietly at their feet, offering them her familiar presence. The couple looked up in surprise, but their faces softened as they gazed at her. Bella gave them both a warm, gentle look, then lowered her head, as if telling them that it was okay to feel what they were feeling. I approached, giving them space, and the young woman spoke softly. "I'm sorry," she said with a small laugh, trying to wipe away a tear. "I didn't expect to have a dog come up to us today." I smiled. She has a way of knowing when someone needs her. The man nodded, his eyes still heavy with emotion. "We just found out we can't have children. It's been hard to come to terms with it." Bella shifted closer to them, her body leaning in, offering a silent comfort. The woman stroked her fur, tears slipping down her cheeks. The man, too, reached out to touch her, the weight of their sadness seeming to ease, if only a little. After a few moments, the woman looked up at me, her face a little less burdened. "Thank you for bringing her here," she whispered. "I didn't know how much I needed this, just to feel understood." I nodded, my heart swelling with pride for the dog who had silently brought peace to so many. Sometimes it's the small moments that make all the difference. We stayed with them for a while longer, allowing the young couple to find a bit of peace in Bella's quiet presence. As we left the park, Bella trotted by my side, her step light, her tail wagging slowly as if she knew what she had done. She didn't need recognition or praise. Her love was enough, and that was all that mattered. I looked down at Bella, knowing that our time together was precious. She had been my hero, my protector, and my best friend. And as I walked beside her, I realized that even in her absence, she would always be with me, in every heart she had touched, in every life she had healed. Our story was far from over. Bella had shown me that love in its purest form was something that never truly faded. It continued, quietly and gently, leaving ripples of kindness and understanding wherever it went. And as we walked into the horizon, I knew that Bella's legacy would live on forever in every small act of love, in every moment of healing, in every life she had touched. The end for now. As the year moved forward, I started to realize that Bella had become much more than a companion to me. She had become a part of the community, a gentle force that connected people, one quiet moment at a time. The way she comforted, listened, and simply existed was a reminder to me of how important it was to be present in the lives of others. It wasn't about grand gestures or solving problems. It was about offering love and support in ways that sometimes words couldn't express. One evening, we sat in the park as the sun dipped below the horizon. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, and everything felt peaceful. Bella lay beside me, her head resting on my lap, and I ran my fingers through her fur, reflecting on everything we had shared. She had been with me through some of my darkest days, never asking for anything in return except companionship, and in doing so had changed my life in ways I couldn't even begin to describe. I looked down at her and smiled. "You've taught me so much, haven't you?" I whispered, my voice soft. Bella lifted her head, her eyes meeting mine as if she understood every word. Her tail gave a gentle thump on the ground, and in that moment, I realized how much she had taught me, not just about love, but about healing, patience, and the importance of slowing down and appreciating the small moments. It was clear to me now that Bella had a purpose that went beyond just being a dog. She had been sent into my life to show me how to truly live, how to connect with others, and how to be kind and present in the world. And I knew as I sat there with her that I would carry the lessons she had taught me for the rest of my life. The sun finally set and we stood up, ready to head home. Bella walked beside me, her step light and easy. There was no rush, no destination but where we were, together. I realized then that no matter what happened next, Bella had already given me everything I needed. Her presence in my life was enough, and I had no doubt that her legacy of kindness and love would continue to ripple out into the world, touching more hearts, just as she had touched mine. And so we walked home, side by side, knowing that our story together was far from over. Every day with Bella was a gift, and I would cherish it for as long as I could.